Good morning, surfers, weather watchers, climate observers, beachers, all the folks. Loves to you all on this Groundhog Day in the Outer Banks as we look at the geocolor composite satellite shot provided to us by NOAA. We see what we can confirm with our eyes here on the ground that there is a giant bank of clouds sitting over the southeast US, squeezing out all sorts of precipitation from Texas to the Outer Banks. And here on the Outer Banks, we've got some light rain. It's pretty cold in the lower to middle 40s, depending on where you are along the strands of islands and peninsulas. Um, I don't know. It's kind of cool. One of the neat things about the geography of the Outer Banks is it's constantly changing. And I'm living here on Manio, right? But just to the east of us is Nag's Head and what was once Body Island. But Body Island is now a peninsula because the strand of sand that composes Body Island connected to northern North Carolina and Virginia as sand just built up over in that area. Just got basically probably some sand got you know knocked off one end of the island chain and then pushed up in the current or some kind of storm and just whoosh ended up creating a land bridge. So a lot of people still refer to that section of the Outer Banks as Body Island, but it's not an island anymore. It's a peninsula. But, one day it might be an island again. Um, the island to the south of Body Island is Hatteras Island, but Hatteras Island was once, I believe, called Pea Island, and there is still a national wildlife refuge on Hatteras Island called Pea Island National Wildlife Refuge. So Body Island's just to the east of us, but it's not an island, it's a peninsula. And Hatteras Island is the next island down past Oregon Inlet, which I don't know, I think about 150 years ago used to not even be there, but got blasted through by a hurricane. Um, and so Pea Island is no more, is Hatteras Island, but there's still a Pea Island National Wildlife Refuge there. And if the confusion is not enough for you, Manio is spelled Manteo, so you could pronounce it Manteo if you're reading it, but if you're local here, it's Manio. And then Rodanth, the locals here call it either Rodanth or Rodanthi, and that has been the case all of my life. And then if you get up a little bit to the north and west, there's a place called Moyak, which you could also call Moyak, and on and on and on. So the English language is alive and well and ever changing here on the Outer Banks. It is not dead, it's not fixed. I guess you fix a language, it's dead. It's certainly alive and well, still evolving, just as the island chains are themselves. So, just some interesting Outer Banks trivia as we get into the OBX wave report today, where we discuss all things waves, weather, climate, and beach lifestyle. And for the wave report today, we're going to mainly talk waves and weather, but I'm going to do a special report on the sea ices and did a climate science chat yesterday and found that global sea ice is now at record low levels. And so what we're going to do for you guys, not in the wave report here, we're going to do a special report on the sea ice, and we're going to do a little bit of a deeper analysis on the data that is being produced by the global monitors and also look at the present state of the Earth climate system in the ocean and on the ocean's surface. and in the atmosphere, as well as the sea ice, to try and give you guys an idea of what's going on with the sea ice. Is actually not entirely clear the primary causes at present of the new record low sea ice state, but the ocean in general is at record warm levels across the global ocean system, and that's clearly having an effect on the Arctic. And the reason why we look at the Arctic here in the Outer Banks and the Antarctic also, and the Antarctic is very important for the Outer Banks, but so is the Arctic, is that what happens in the polar regions does not stay in the polar regions. So say, for example, if we get a lot of Greenland melt up way to the north and east of us, that has an impact on the Gulf Stream. And the Gulf Stream is a fast-moving hot ocean current that moves offshore. And we're going to talk more about the Gulf Stream today because we got some warmer water temperatures that has something to do with the Gulf Stream. And so the Gulf Stream is pretty close to the Outer Banks and it moves pretty quick on up toward the north. And as it does, it sucks water away from the coastline. And that keeps sea levels relatively lower for the US East Coast than they would be without the Gulf Stream. But if you get a lot of melt up there in Greenland, you get a lot of cold water south of Greenland that slows down the Gulf Stream. And if the Gulf Stream slows down, you get less suck. And in this case, suck is good. And I'm sorry for the parents out here that may be listening and saying, I'm not gonna let my kids listen to this. But but in any case, you get less suck, and in this case, suck is good because suck pulls the water away from the Outer Banks, and so you get lower sea levels. But if you get more Greenland melt, you have less suck, and that's bad because the sea levels tend to rise a little bit. So you get this like rebound back toward the coast in the ocean system as the Gulf Stream slows down and sucks the water away less. And if the Gulf Stream stopped completely, and the Gulf Stream is not going to stop completely, I don't believe. You might want to talk to Stefan Ramsdorf about that, about like the consequences of Greenland melt and how much Greenland melt it would take to significantly slow down the Gulf Stream, because Stefan Ramsdorf over on Twitter, check him out, is one of the main experts there on the ocean circulation system and all of that. But if you significantly slow down the Gulf Stream, it does have an impact on sea levels for the East Coast and the Outer Banks. And 1 or 2 foot sea level rise here in the Outer Banks just because of less suck coming from the Gulf Stream would be a really big deal here in the Outer Banks. So yeah, so if the Arctic warms up and Greenland melts a lot, we feel it here in the Outer Banks. And then way down to the south, way down, many of us who live here have never seen Antarctica. But Antarctica also has a big influence on the Outer Banks. And why? Well, if Antarctic melt accelerates, because the way gravity works on the global ocean system, when you get more water coming off of Antarctica, you see more sea level rise in the northern hemisphere. And that's a gravity thing. And you would have to talk about the ocean scientists and oceanographers to talk about why, but it's very fascinating the way gravity works in the ocean and the way the deposition of ice and water from potential melt driven by climate change, driven by fossil fuel burning, can have an effect on sea level rise in different places. And so, but if you get a lot of melt in Antarctica, you get a lot of sea level rise here in the Outer Banks. So this is why we want to pay attention to things far away here on the coastline, because things far away have big impacts here. And as a surfer and a coastal dweller, I want my Outer Banks to be safe and secure for my lifetime and the lifetime of those to come. And so that's why I'm advocating in my reports for this big clean energy transition. It's not about being flower children, it's about taking care of our children. And don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with the flower children. And those who hate on the flower children, well, maybe you better look at yourself because there might be a little something wrong there inside of you. But that's all I'm going to say about that. All right, so Antarctica, Greenland, sea ice, there's a lot of relationship there. Land ice, oceans, climate. We're going to talk about that in the special report. I did a little bit of preamble, a little bit more preamble than I thought I would. But right now, yeah, we've got this big old mass of clouds over us, lots of moisture over the Gulf of Mexico, lots of moisture over the Atlantic, some moisture getting pulled in to the system from the Pacific, warmer than normal water temperatures offshore, both in the Gulf and the North Atlantic. And this system's kind of been hanging around for a while, though, with the weather. Things are going to start moving again, so this bad boy is going to get kicked out and the weather's going to change. And we'll talk about that as we go. But for right now, we got this storm lingering. We're going to get rain all day. It's not going to be too stormy. We have nor'easter light and it's getting lighter, and the winds are calming down a bit. And the waves right now are in the range of 2 to 4 foot with some light northerly and northeasterly winds. So that's the present conditions right now. Cold, rainy, light northeasterly winds and waves in the range of 2 to 4 feet across the Outer Banks. All right, so in the infrared satellite shot with the colder cloud tops visible, you can see that big old mucky, yucky, mild, mucky, yucky, mild storm system over the southeast with that moisture streaming in off the Pacific and some moisture getting tapped from the Atlantic and the Gulf of Mexico. Another impulse moving down across the Great Lakes, nothing too crazy. And we've got this big storm off the west coast here. The storm systems got interrupted for a little while by a big old high pressure, and now the storms are back, and we're getting more toward like a normal stormy situation for the West Coast. So typically during wintertime, it's a little stormy on the West Coast, and we're getting back to that now. Nothing too crazy, although this particular storm it looks kind of big and gnarly. It's not anywhere near as bad as the big old bomb cyclones and atmospheric rivers we saw out there in the mid-December to mid-January timeframe. So that's good news for the West Coast. All right, so that's just a general look at the clouds and the weather systems for the US in relationship to the Outer Banks. I'm going to go ahead and zoom in on some local radar observations and some alerts. Let's go ahead and update this thing because I was looking at that maybe about an hour ago. Okay, so we've got some rain and weather coming in across northern North Carolina and some more rainy conditions out here just north of Wilmington near the Jacksonville region. And this weather is streaming off it's coming in from the southwest and heading toward the northeast. And so across the Outer Banks today, we're expected to see intermittent rain, light rain, maybe moderate rain in some locations during some spurts. It's a big old mass of rain. It's just like, kind of flowing up here from the Gulf region and heading across North Carolina and eastern North Carolina. And we're going to you can see all these alerts out here. That's like winter weather advisories. And um, I don't know that. Let's see. Now I'm curious whether there's yellow alerts. There's 2 alerts in Cherokee County, Texas. Okay. There's a flood watch and some other stuff, which we're not going to cover here, but yeah. Okay, but getting here on the Outer Banks, we've got just the only alerts we have right now are small craft advisors in the near offshore environment because we've had some maybe 10 to 20 mile per hour winds, nothing too crazy. It's not too nuts out there. Yesterday we had some stiff northeast winds and some pretty dramatic conditions on the coast. I don't think we're going to see anything like that today, but who knows? We do have this energy of the frontal boundary and the storm system, and I don't know, maybe a little thing might spin up offshore and give us a little bit of an unexpected drama today, but it's not in the forecast. Looking at the monitors on the coastlines, it doesn't look too bad. Yesterday was fun and intense to observe. We were down at Jeanette's Pier and got some great shots of 3 to 7 foot waves smashing into the coast with a 20 to 30 mile per hour northeast winds. So I say mild nor'easter. It's mild nor'easter. Yeah, nothing too crazy as far as impacts go, but definitely some drama in the surf. All right, so let's go on to our NOAA's quantitative prediction forecast for us major weather nerds. I'm a surfer, but dude, I am a weather nerd. I cannot help it. I love following the NOAA's and sucking up all the data they provide. It's just so interesting. It feeds my brain, and I can't stop being grateful for the wonderful scientists and those who do the work to provide me and others with so much information. And so we've got this persistent system over the southeast that is actually going to head on out. We're going to see a change in the weather. We're going to see a shift to a different pattern, a warmer pattern by next week sometime. Probably, well, it probably get warmer by Sunday and then maintain in like a warmer range through the next couple of weeks. We'll still see some intermittent storms coming through here, but the persistent rainier pattern that we've been seeing is going to get broken up by nicer conditions, sunnier conditions. So not as stormy in the next 2 weeks. This is 1 to 7 day prediction, but I'm foreshadowing some of the reports that I'm going to look at later on. So, but we do see a shift in the weather for the U.S. Southeast, although with rainy conditions remaining for the next day or two. And then out west, we have a shift back to a more traditional stormy pattern. Although with the upper Pacific Northwest, it does get a bit stormy with some pretty high rainfall totals out towards Seattle or that region, and then into British Columbia, and maybe some strong stormy conditions now and then for Northern California and parts of coastal Oregon. So we'll have to keep an weather eye to it. We don't see anything in the way of like big old rivers of moisture or bomb cyclones in the forecast. We'll keep an eye on it, but that does not appear to be the case. All right, so getting back to the Outer Banks, getting back to our local observations, we're gonna go down to the coastline to Jeanette's Pier, and we were down there yesterday for some nice, pretty fun, dramatic observations of our mild nor'easter. And present conditions at Jeanette's Pier in the range of 2 to 3 feet, according to the monitors. I've looked at some cameras also on Jeanette's Pier. I've been I think I'm maybe leaning a little bit too much on the models. So I'm trying to get some camera observations to confirm what the models are saying. And looking at the cameras, it does actually look like the waves are in the range of about 2 to 3 foot, although a little choppy, a little rough out there at Jeanette's Pier. Primary swell coming in at 7 seconds, secondary swell coming in at 10 seconds. Winds out of the north-northeast at 11 miles per hour. That's an onshore flow, a lot less intense than yesterday, which saw some 20 to 30 mile per hour winds. Air temperatures are cold at 42 degrees Fahrenheit, but the ocean water temperatures, and I said I was going to talk about this, and one of the interesting things is as we get persistent easterly and northeasterly winds here on the Outer Banks, the Gulf Stream is not far offshore. So if we get persistent easterly and northeasterly winds, it can tend to push the warmer waters of the Gulf Stream closer to shore, and we get some warming in the waters here on the Outer Banks, and that's what's been happening. So right now, and I noticed this in my surf on, let's see, today's Thursday, on Tuesday, a fun surf session on Tuesday, because the like once I paddled out, got off shore near the pier, the water temperatures were considerably warmer. It was, I mean, not really warm. It was probably still in the lower 50s, but near shore water temperatures probably like upper 40s. And so there was like a perceptible change in the water temperature from just right there at the breakers at the beach in the shore break, and then offshore to the first sandbar and the second sandbar. And that's kind of cool. It's a cool experience to experience the changeability of the ocean. But right now, according to the monitor, it's 53 degrees Fahrenheit there at Jeanette's Pier in the water. That's 4 degrees warmer than it was yesterday. So getting that influence of those winds pushing the Gulf Stream, which is a warm water current, closer to shore. Weather conditions are cloudy with light rain and an expected high today of 43 degrees Fahrenheit. Heading on down south to past Oregon Inlet, past the Oregon Inlet Life Saving Station, past the Pea Island National Wildlife Refuge, which is on Hatteras Island, and heading on down to Rodanth or Rodanthi, depending on your preference for speech here in the Outer Banks. The waves are in the range of 2 to 3 feet as well, with the primary swell coming in at 10 seconds with those 2 to 3 foot waves, and a secondary swell coming in at 7 seconds. Winds are out of the north-northeast at 15 miles per hour, a bit stiffer here. Um, and this is a cross. North-northeast is kind of coming in like this. So a little bit of a cross-shore component with a mostly onshore component, but coming in at a high angle to the shore. Air temperatures right now at Rodanthe in the range of the upper 40s. We got some readings around 45 to 48 degrees, depending on which temperature gauge you're looking at. And then ocean water temperature is much warmer again with that easterly and northeasterly wind pushing the Gulf Stream closer. 60 degrees water temperature just a couple days ago. Rodanthe, right there, see there I go again. And Rodanth, same place, had 54-degree water temperatures, so 6-degree water temperature increase with that wind coming in off the Gulf Stream. And then the weather conditions right there at Rodanth are cloudy. We expect rain throughout the day. Highs in the upper 40s, and we've already reached that in most locations. All right, and then heading on down south again, down Route 12, and we're going to go to Buxton. Not gonna do a south-facing beach observation. I know. I'm sorry, guys. I just didn't get one for today. But getting to Buxton, big old Buxton, and Buxton is the big wave spot for the Outer Banks today, with waves in the range of 3 to 4 feet. With that northeasterly wind coming in at 16 miles per hour, that's a cross-shore flow. Might be chopping up those waves there over at Buxton, but Buxton apparently is the swell magnet, the king of swell magnets here in the Outer Banks, with a primary swell coming in at 10 seconds, secondary swell coming in at 6 seconds. Air temperatures at Buxton in the range of about 46 to 48 degrees as well, so similar to Rodanth. The monitor I got from the beach said 47 degrees. Hopefully that's about right. Ocean water temperature is also much warmer with that easterly flow pushing that Gulf Stream closer to shore. Or like at least the surface waters from the Gulf Stream closer to shore. 66-degree Fahrenheit ocean water temperatures down there at Buxton. That is positively mild, although you're definitely going to still want your wetsuits, particularly with those cold air temperatures. And weather conditions today are cloudy, rain predicted throughout the day with that mucky, mild Groundhog Day storm coming through here. So rain throughout the day, high in the upper 40s. And today is Groundhog Day, and with those 2 to 4 foot waves, you're probably going to be surfing on your grovelers. So it's a Groundhog Day for grovelers. I know, it's a little cheesy. Probably good boards today. Yeah, your grovelers are going to be good boards for today. Your fishes, I mean, some of the short boards are pretty good at like catching that mid-range surf, particularly if you're getting like some bigger waves in the 2 to 3 foot range. I got a Lost Rocket Redux as a hybrid. That's a good board for those kind of waves right now. So your grovelers, your fishes, your hybrids, your longboards are all going to work on this Groundhog Day. All right, so let's look out to the future. So I don't know, we got Punxsutawney Phil up there doing the Groundhog thing. Phil's cool, but I like, Noah. Noah, they got the scientist. Groundhog is cute, don't get me wrong, but I'm gonna listen to a scientist, not a groundhog. Although, the celebration is fun. Don't get me wrong. I love all the celebrations. And the speculation is also fun too. There's like a mystique in the air regarding Groundhog Day. So, it's just kind of a fun thing. But okay. But looking at the the forecasters and what they're saying. This is interesting. So it does look like winter might be ending early for the Outer Banks and parts of the US East, particularly if this 8 to 14 day temperature outlook remains in place through much of February and into March. Now, February and March are nothing if not changeable. So we could see a big swing in temperatures beyond the 8 to 14 day time period. But for the Outer Banks, temperatures are expected to be above normal, as particularly as we get into the mid part of next week and then heading on into the following week. And that means like 50, 60-degree temperatures across the Outer Banks. Likely in the 8 to 14 day time period. So at least winter is going to at least take a break, according to what NOAA is saying. And who knows if it's going to come back in later in February as we get into mid to late February and into March. But for now, winter is going to take a break, according to what NOAA is saying. And that's for the Outer Banks. I do also want to note that there's a bit of a dipole. We've got much warmer than normal conditions predicted for the US East and cooler than normal conditions for the West. Dipole is something to keep an eye on, particularly for the central US, as it might help to fire storms across the central US. And worth noting that the central US is a region to look out for severe weather, particularly unstable weather like thunderstorms and tornadoes and things like that. Now, I'm not predicting any of that, nor do I see any major predictions like that yet in the monitors, but getting that dipole in there, that's just something to kind of think about, right? And what we're seeing here in the 8 to 14 day precipitation outlook is also likely above normal precipitation for the central US, right in that battleground between the hot and the cold. So we'll just keep an eye on that for severe weather in the central US in the 8 to 14 day time period. Hopefully things don't get too crazy, but we'll keep an eye on it. For you guys, we got a climate change situation going on where there's more energy in the atmosphere, more lift, more convection, more evaporation coming off the land in the ocean, which can help to fuel storms. So we got some loaded dice situation, and then you get the prevailing conditions kind of setting up here, but generally, but yeah, we'll leave the more fine-tuned understanding to the experts. And right now, according to the Storm Prediction Center, the outlooks aren't really looking like there's anything too crazy expected in the 3 to 8 day time period. So nothing on the horizon as yet as far as severe weather goes in the monitors. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at the global forecast system model and see what the weather is expected to do over the lower 48 over the next, oh, let's see, looks like we got the model out to 246 hours. So let's just run it and see what happens. So we got this area, this messy area. Oop, I didn't run it. Okay, this messy area sweeping on off the U.S. East Coast. High pressure builds in into Sunday. I get a little impulse coming off the Atlantic. Nothing too crazy. This by Tuesday, and another storm sweeping down on Wednesday and Thursday from the Arctic. Big old storm sweeping up from the Gulf region on Friday and Saturday. That looks like it could actually have some severe weather in it. We'll have to keep it. I'm gonna roll this back down to Friday. So yeah, see that? See that big old yellow and red area there in the central US? Um, that's potentially indicative of possible severe weather on late Thursday and into Friday of next week. We'll have to keep an eye on it. That low doesn't look too crazy, so nothing in the bomb cyclone range. But nonetheless, some stormy weather expected to sweep through by the end of next week, particularly for the central US. We'll get some rain if the system does develop as expected for the US East Coast, but nothing too crazy. Snows coming in through the Great Lakes and central US behind the storm. This on Friday. Heading into Saturday, the front does linger for the Outer Banks, possible severe weather or stormy weather running in through Georgia and the Carolinas. That would be the Outer Banks. Looks like we might get a little front coming through here with some stormy conditions into Saturday and Sunday of next week. And then as we roll on into Monday, it looks like it just ends in late Sunday. So as we roll on into late Sunday, the front gets pushed offshore. We got high pressure starting to dominate and some snowy conditions in upper Minnesota. Yeah, so nothing too crazy up there in Minnesota, just with some snowy conditions. This by Sunday, February the 12th, as we're starting to get into mid-February. Okay, so that's a roundup of the weather for the lower 48. Heading back to the wave monitors. We've got, let's see, this is now, when will then be now? Okay, here we go. Right now, offshore, we've got waves coming pretty much directly in toward the coastline with a swell coming in from the east, heading toward the west. Wave heights in the range of about 3 to 5 feet in the near offshore environment, that translating to 2 to 4 foot waves down on the coast. Storm's supposed to move offshore into tomorrow, which is Friday. I can't believe the days have moved so fast. Okay, and with the movement of the system offshore, winds are expected to turn to the north and northwest, and so will the swell. Waves expected to be in the range of 4 to 5 feet by tomorrow. We might get those waves kicking up though later in the day, and I'm just advancing the model by hours so that you can see that with those strong northerly winds behind the system, we get some near offshore waves in the range of 6 to 8 feet. Yeah, 6 to 8 feet. This coming from the north, these waves coming from the north, the swell coming from the north. So probably very choppy with those winds coming from the north and the northwest behind the system. And I just want to, yeah, kicking up a little bit and then heading offshore into later in the day on Friday. I'm just going to back this up into today again and then tomorrow. And then now, by the time we get into Saturday, the system is well offshore and the waves are starting to calm down again into the 2 to 4 foot range in the near offshore environment. And then on into Sunday, we get a more of like a southerly impulse with a swell moving in from the south and southeast. And this swell is actually pretty decent sized for Sunday in the range of 3 to 5 feet in the near offshore environment. And then by Monday, we get more of an easterly flow of the waves, waves coming in from the southeast, but canting more toward the east and building a little bit in through Sunday with a 4 to 6 foot swell in the near offshore environment. And that's a roundup of the model forecast for waves. I do want to show you guys what's going on in the North Atlantic right now. You've got a big old blow pushing waves toward Ireland right now. Nothing, well, I mean, this is crazy, but not as crazy it has been. Significant wave heights in the range of 16 feet off the northern beaches of Ireland and 18 feet off Scotland. Oh man, I'm gonna have to hold on. Winter nose conditions are not favorable. Okay, and then big old storm running up toward Iceland, which we showed you guys yesterday, with serious significant wave heights in the range of 30 feet there on Saturday off of Iceland, and a big blow across the North Atlantic with large waves stretching across a big swath. Looks like about an 800, maybe 1,000 mile swath of ocean here, um, with significant wave heights in the range of 30 feet. Yeah, a little bit interspersed, but like a lot of impulses in the system. All these systems heading off toward Greenland and Iceland. We're going to talk, woo, look at this, Sunday. I think that's Sunday. Sunday the, yep, 5th. So yeah, Sunday the 5th. Look at that. That is just a huge area of significant wave heights in the range of upper 20 to lower 30-foot range. It's a big old swath, about a 1,000 mile swath of ocean, 1,000 miles long. Looks like about 600 or 700 miles wide. Wow, that's a big swath of rough water there. And then that thing heads on off toward Greenland and Iceland into Monday, and I think that's the end of the model. So definitely some big waves out there for the shipping lanes in the North Atlantic. In the on the West Coast, waves are right now in the range of 5 maybe to 6 feet. That's pushing it. Yeah, mostly, yeah, 5 to 6 feet. So mainly in the 5 to 6 foot range for the central and northern coasts of California, and looks like 2 feet, maybe 2 to 3 feet for the southerly beaches there in California. And the impulses do come more directly towards shore here. And so we get some stormier conditions in the near coastal regions over the next couple of days with waves kicking up in the 8 foot range for the central and northern coastline, and still looking like the 2 to 4 foot range there for the southern beaches. Yeah, and you can see it. So the storms right now, they're angling in toward the west coast from just south of the Aleutians. So that's why you see more stormy conditions predicted for like Seattle, Washington, Oregon, and Northern California. They're just kind of coming across the upper Pacific here at this kind of angle and striking the coast. So the southern areas of California are less likely to see stormy conditions, although some of the fronts may wrap around. That looks like that's the case there for Monday. And we got some big surf on Monday for the southern beaches, and the range looks like a 5 to 8 feet, and then 5 to 9 feet in the near offshore environment. So it could kick up there for the beaches of California by Monday, and then for the central and northern beaches, 12 to 14 foot significant waves. So nothing to shake a stick at there. All right, so thank you for joining me for the OBX Wave Report, where we discuss all things waves, weather, climate, and beach lifestyle. For the Outer Banks today, it's going to be rainy, cold, 2 to 4 foot waves. And over the next couple of days, we're likely to see 2 to 6 foot waves. Some days, of course, smaller than others. But the overall outlook for this Groundhog Day is we're looking for warmer conditions over the next 2 weeks or so for the Outer Banks. Likely some decent surf weather, and we'll keep you posted. And please, as ever, do everything you can to save our beautiful coastlines from the impacts of climate change driven by fossil fuel burning. The primary effort right now to mass deploy clean energy in the form of wind, solar, and electric vehicles. We can do it. We can reduce our carbon emissions rapidly by this means over the next decade, and we can secure a safe world for our coastlines, for all the people who live there, and for our children. So thank you for joining me, and